Hello, my name is Rachel Cahalan, and today I'll be presenting GLMI's second Fast 5 video in billing with Cinical. There are several reasons why the clinical aspect of the system is important to billing. First, it creates the HIPS code for payment of episodic claims. It also holds the diagnosis information required for payment that must also be entered on the claim. It records MU 150 and MU 2200, and of course those are your insurance and your therapy questions that drive the creation of the PPS episode. The Type 1 and 4 assessments must be completed and locked prior to any billing. And last, the 485 must be finalized and sent to the physician. HIPS stands for Health Insurance Prospective Payment System. The HIPS rate codes represent specific sets of patient characteristics, also known as case mix groups. Payment determinations are then made based on these groups. Clinical assessment data is the basic input used to determine which case mix applies to each patient. By associating HIPS codes with revenue codes, you are then able to bill the correct amount for each episode. Here you can easily see the components that make up your HIPS code. You have 5 separate components, and you can see them here on your column headers. The first position has to do with grouping, second from your clinical domain, third functional, fourth service domain, and the fifth will be your supply. Also notice the column on the left-hand side that determines episode timing. This will help to determine your category as well. The patient's HIPS code can be viewed easily from the clinical record screen. From Ubiquity's main menu, select Clinical, then Clinical Assessment and Clinical Assessment Care Plan. You'll notice to the right of the screen the red arrow is pointing to the patient's HIPS. I mentioned earlier the importance of 2 questions in your OASIS dataset. A HIPS code is required for all episodic claims, so in order to receive a HIPS code, the following requirements must be met. MU 150 for insurance must be marked either with Medicare or Medicare HMO, and then M 2200 for therapy must also be filled in. It cannot be marked NA. This will generate your HIPS. Diagnosis codes are also a key factor in billing. First, they're part of your case mix for payment. They're also required in Box 66 on the UB04 for all payers, and you'll notice 6 diagnosis codes pull through and show on your claim. Here you can see the page on your clinical assessment where the diagnosis codes pull from. This is a copy of your bill. 2 things I want to point out. The first arrow shows your HIPS code and where that displays. Next, on the bottom towards the left, are your row of diagnosis codes, and you can see that your first 6 diagnosis codes that you entered in your clinical assessment will pull to the claim. To simplify the most important factors that need to be completed within clinical in order to bill, I would like to show you 4 different steps that will need to be taken. First, prior to RAT billing, your OASIS must be locked and the 485 must be finalized. Then, prior to final billing, that OASIS assessment must be exported and your 485 must be returned. This concludes the second of the 4 billing videos used to kick off our Fast 5 series. Watch for next week's video on billing with contacts.